Hi, everyone. Welcome to our talk on standardization and security. My name is Vinny Carpenter, and I am the Vice President of Engineering at Northwestern Mutual, where I lead the cloud and DevOps engineering teams. I'm honored to be joined by my colleague, Ravi Devanini, who is a Senior Director of Engineering, and he leads our DevOps engineering organization. Today, we're going to tell you a story of how we are on a journey of standardization and simplification and how that journey has led to improvements in our overall security and development posture. Before we dive into the meat of the topic, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Northwestern Mutual. So, we're a Fortune 90 financial services company that strives to be at the center of our customers' financial life and provides insurance, investment, planning, and advisory services to help our clients achieve financial security. We have 5 million customers and a revenue of around $34 billion. We're a privately held 165-year-old company with great financial strength. Today, we're going to start by discussing the seminal work of Barry Schwartz, who is a famous American psychologist and the author who describes the paradox of choice. Then we will dig into our experiences with unlimited choices and unlimited flexibility, and then pivot to talk about how standardization has helped simplify and secure our environment. Finally, we'll discuss our approaches, technology and cultural implications, and share some of the outcomes and lessons learned as we embark on this journey. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ravi.
Thanks, Vinny. I'd like to introduce this concept called paradox of choice. As Vinny mentioned, a lot of these ideas have been borrowed from a book by Barry Schwartz. So, the first and the most common example of the paradox of choice is found at a grocery store. Try walking into any aisle. You will see a number of varieties of cereal, olive oil, toothpaste, shampoos, etc. Right? Next example is TV. Number of TV channels you get from cable TV is 1761. And if you look at the number of streaming services available, Netflix has over 4,000 titles available. Prime Video has even more, millions of hours of content. And that's just scratching the surface. Many choices with the providers, way too many shows, movies. This is practically true for everything we see in real life. Choice is a luxury. Um, More number of choices is considered a symbol of privilege. Too much choice is the current reality of our society. But hey, isn't that a good thing? Having a number of options will help us choose what's good for us, right? Not really. If you look at the graph here, you will see that having no choice results in very low satisfaction. Initially, as more choices are added, satisfaction increases. But as the number of choices keep increasing, people tend to feel more pressure, confusion, and potentially dissatisfaction with their choice, which can then lead to anxiety, indecision, analysis paralysis, and dissatisfaction, right? There are a lot of names to describe the same phenomena. Fear of missing out, you can call it as law of diminishing returns, and whatever you call it, it's just quite real. And there's a more scientific angle to this too. There is this research that's published by American Psychological Association. It says the more decisions an individual makes in a short period of time, the more each decision decreases in quality. It creates what is called a decision fatigue. Because we have a finite amount of mental energy to exert, we use the more energy you use for trivial decisions, everyday decisions, the less energy you have for critical ones. Steve Jobs used to wear the same kind of dress every day, black turtleneck and jeans, right? That's all you ever saw him in. President Obama always wears blue or gray suits. He talks about paring down trivial decisions. Now we'll talk about how this idea applies to us in the cloud world. This is a quick look at the tool landscape, right? This is just a small sampling of a plethora of tools available in the market. We have tried to organize it into logical categories. You can see there are categories that are high level steps in a software development lifecycle. Each of these are stages. So you'll see how many options we have for tools that provide a similar capability. For example, you can see source code. We have GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, AWS Code Commit. All of these tools provide a way of version control. Similarly, with coding, there are hundreds of programming languages. I've only listed a few there, and I'm not talking about all the options available in the market. I'm talking about how companies typically end up with multiple tools that they actually use for the same capability, right? So what happens if you have too much tool sprawl, right? First is high cost of maintenance. You're probably paying multiple licenses for the same capability. You're probably logged in with multiple vendors. Your automation that you create is reusable only in your technology island, not broadly, right? And so your technology islands create these islands of automation. Too many tools, hence the complexity is high, right? You're creating standards that apply to the whole enterprise is a challenge. Data tool sprawl leads to data sprawl, which then means that capturing your data metrics, success metrics, is going to be a challenge. Security is a challenge because you have to constantly patch across all your tools. This adds to the cost as well. A lot of lost productivity. Team members can change from one team to another easily, and Vinny's going to talk about this idea a little bit later. So what do we do, right? What I have described so far is a buffet. When we say with a buffet, here's all the things you want to eat, go make your own plate, right? When we do that, every plate is different from every other plate. Very few people think about nourishment and health when there's a buffet. I would load up on dessert, for example. And there's a lot of wastage too. With too many tools, that's exactly what we're doing. We're saying, here's all the tools, go create your applications. What we want to say instead is we will provide a set menu, limited options, but good options. We think about health and nourishment. We vet and select these tools very intentionally. We streamline our tools, we streamline our process. We want to improve efficiency, free up resources, right, to invest energy into actual differentiators for the business. This is called a purposeful evolution of technology. We're saying we want to create a golden path, a path in which all the developers have to do is drive, right? So an application development team doesn't need to worry about what supply chain tools to use, what CI/CD security guardrails they should use. All they do is develop and deploy their application. And this is an example of what a standardized platform might look like. Very clean, right? This a very limited number of tools standardized across the enterprise. This is our set menu, right? If you need to write code, you use GitHub or a small number of approved programming languages. One tool to do your builds and one place to store artifacts. One tool to orchestrate your deployments and one tool for infrastructure as code. Intentionally standardizing the tools landscape, right? If you compare that with the previous diagram, it's definitely much cleaner. So once we standardize on the tools, we want to create a single way in which an application can be deployed all the way to production. So all the steps that a change needs to go through from commit to production deployment, that's your pipeline. You want to standardize that pipeline. One pipeline to rule it all. This provides a standardized build, scanning, testing, standardized artifact storage, signature, deployment. If you do this, a lot of different development standards can then be enforced, things such as code reviews and artifact security. So if you're an application developer, you don't need to think about how to deploy your applications or what security steps you need to take. You just write code, you just write your unit tests, and everything is ready to go. So in one of our previous examples, we said we only use a few programming languages, right? So what happens if someone just ignores this and chooses to use a programming languages that's more modern or more fun, right? What can we really do? So what I've showed you before is a carrot approach. What we're saying is that if you want to deploy faster and in a more secure way, use our standardized pipeline. Now that's a carrot. You want to start with this process obviously by offering carrots, but only carrots and no sticks, it's not going to work. We need both. We need to enforce certain standards, standards such as code reviews, or that you need to create a change ticket for every production change or security scanning in your pipeline. Everything, even things such as setting limits on how much cloud spend you want to allow or how much CPU you want your applications to use. Pretty much anything your organization wants, you need to be able to enforce. This is a key to success. Sticks are as important as carrots. Now, this sounds like way too much policing, right? Less freedom. Obviously, there's a lot of cultural and organizational implications to this whole idea. And Winnie's going to talk about some of those.
Okay, thanks, Ravi. So Ravi laid out the case of why essentially unlimited choices may not be all that it's cracked up to be. Having unlimited options leads to cognitive load, anxiety, and variability, and honestly complexity in your environment. Decision fatigue, as Ravi described, is a real thing. I want to start with a quote from Alan Kay, a computer scientist at Xerox PARC and a pioneer of object-oriented programming, who famously said, "Simple things should be simple and complex things should be possible." So that idea informs our approach. So when you're picking tools, Start with the end in mind. Are you choosing the right tool with the end in mind? Have you laid out all of the pros and cons of the tools? Will it integrate into your existing ecosystem? Will it scale to meet your future needs? Are you just picking new tools because they're new and shiny, right? Um, the goal is to focus on business outcomes and not undifferentiated technology choices. As you pivot to focus on business outcomes rather than undifferentiated technology choices, the path forward becomes clear. As you embark on this journey, you must know this will be a multi-year journey, but you will get incremental value along the way. Know the road is long, and you'll have to make these changes without disrupting the business. So a big bang approach, in our opinion, will not be optimal. Data migration is also critical. So if you're moving from one source control management system to another, as Ravi was describing earlier, things like the commit history, comments, merge requests, all have to be part of the new system. And training is also critical on how best to leverage the new tools. So I often get asked, is standardization detrimental to innovation? And the short answer is no. But in all seriousness, there's many things to consider when standardizing across a large enterprise, right? First, we know that technology decisions don't always have a correct answer. You operate with a bias for action, and you make the best decision based on the information that you have in front of you. Historically, we've given our teams a lot of decision-making abilities at the local level, which can lead to teams building things that already exist. I know I'm guilty of this as a recovering software engineer. Builders love to build things, and we want to encourage our builders, but they have to try and build more things that advance our business capabilities and just not commodity technology components or libraries that already exist in the marketplace. So it's crucial to know what's worth building and what is just a commodity that could be leveraged. Finally, we have to discuss the incentive models, right? Are we incentivizing the right behavior? If we celebrate folks making shiny new things all the time, well, that's a behavior you're going to encourage. So this is not to suggest that we shouldn't celebrate folks building shiny new things. We should celebrate those things as well as celebrating business outcomes. Speaking of outcomes, let's talk about the outcomes we experience. Right, a couple quick items. Centralized governance is possible and can help improve security by leveraging automated guardrails. As we move forward with more standardizations, teams that adopt these new capabilities see improved lead time to change, and we have a more consistent environment. We have less variability in our environment and less snowflakes. This leads to more developer collaborations. Right? If all of the developers provide and follow a standardized way to work, you make it easier for engineers to move from team to team. We're seeing things like things improve, such as developer onboarding, right? We talk internally a lot about this notion of fungibility, and having developers use the same set of tools and technologies and processes simplifies that ability to swarm on crucial efforts. So if your developers can swarm to your biggest opportunities, you're going to get more value from that developer. I'm going to now turn it over to Ravi to talk about lessons learned.
Thanks, Vinny. In all of this, there were some key lessons that we learned. First, single source control is an absolute must. If you have multiple SCM systems, your code is fragmented essentially. Your developer permissions are fragmented, which causes high cost of maintenance. It's a nightmare. So if you don't have a single SCM system, please fix that first. That's a one SCM system for your entire organization. That's a must. Next, having a central team that takes a global view of the entire process, of all the automation, of the common libraries, creating an overall vision, or centralized metrics, centralized governance, all of this is essential, right? Like you can call this centralized DevOps team, a tools team, or you can call it a platform engineering team, whatever the name is, but such a team is essential. Next one, when you talked about picking the tools with end in mind, right? Like we have to understand that when selecting a tool, we don't need the best tool in the market. We need a tool that fits the business needs. If a tool is pretty good and fits all your requirements, that's all you need. Choosing one tool that's pretty good is much better than having multiple amazing tools in the market. And finally, when we talk about standardization and governance and security, it could be considered as boring or too much policing, but it doesn't have to be. It can be made fun. We can implement several gamification techniques and build excitement and make it fun. It goes back to the point that Winnie was saying about incentives aligning to business outcomes. This is a great way of making standardization and security super fun. Thanks for everybody for attending this session.